Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to have you all here on this episode today with Ananda. My name is Anne-Sophie, and I'm your host on the Hero's Journey podcast. This is a sacred space where you can kiss your doubt goodbye and embark with confidence and love on your quest to become the hero on your journey back to wholeness. Together, with brilliant minds, we venture into the unknown to revive and mend what is torn and to patch what is missing. And I'm so excited for today's episode because today we're going to venture into the unknown with beautiful Ananda. Unlike others, I didn't directly encounter Ananda through the community that follows the work by Dr. Joe. Actually, I stumbled upon you through your boyfriend, Zach, who has a wonderful testimonial online there. It's just mind-blowing. And I noticed that he had like a Facebook group and or Instagram. He was putting up something about transformation. And of course, then I stumbled upon you. And once I discovered you, I was just like so curious because you had this beautiful groundedness and playfulness that you were just like radiating. And when I looked or stumbled upon your homepage or about your website, I discovered that you are a psychospiritual counselor and integrative holistic mental health coach. And I was like, that sounds interesting. That sounds like something I could need actually. Because during this time, I was going through a lot of stuff. I've been to a retreat and meditating a lot, and there was so many things come up. My mind was overwhelmed. I was so lost. I was like not grounded at all. I was just like all over the place. And when I hear those words, it's like, oh my gosh, there's actually a counselor for that. There's like really someone who can help me balancing these two worlds, like all the new insights that I have. And I went on to book a session with you, and luckily you also offer online services. So I was like, oh, thank God, because I'm all the way here in Europe and you're all the way in the US. So I just booked in with you, and I'm so grateful that I did because you really grounded me. Your energy is very infectious, and you just have something natural about you. It's just, yeah, it's what I do, like driving a bicycle. It's just like, yeah, and you're so intuitive, and you just you provide such a safe space so that all those things can come up, and you really know how to guide people through these emotions that sometimes we are scared of to face off alone. And it was just like overall such a wonderful experience. And like I said, the most that I was impressed with you was just your groundedness and how second nature this knowledge is for you, and how you just embody all this wisdom, and how you are able with your confidence and with your groundedness help other people to move through whatever they have to move through. So thank you again for this wonderful sessions, and thank you
Absolutely.
so much for being here in this podcast to share your wisdom and share your knowledge.
I'm very, very happy to be here and to share, and it just comes pouring out of my heart. So it's just effortless.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Well, I was curious, and I already asked you this in the before we decided to hop on this podcast. We had a short session just to inform you and everything, and I was like, how does it come so natural to you? And I actually figured out that you were surrounded with spirituality or just like this type of knowledge basically your whole life. So I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about how your childhood was, how you grew up, and when this knowledge entered your life.
People always ask that. They're like, when did your spiritual journey begin? And I'm like, at conception, like in the
Yeah.
womb. My mom was getting her master's degree in what's called transpersonal psychology at the time, so spiritual psychology. And at the time in America, the only school on the East Coast was in Georgia that offered anything transpersonal, anything spiritual. So I was in the womb for her last semester of school. So I was doing the walking meditations with her, any of these, just more again like psycho-spiritual transpersonal practices. I was in the womb doing those things. I was lucky enough to be born at home, which is not,
Wow.
it's becoming a lot more common now, thank goodness, but back then it definitely was not the norm. So I was born at home, I had a midwife, and it was just like the most, I won't say it was the most effortless birth because I know I got birth trauma, but I know that this journey for me started before I even got here. My mom
Mm,
birthed me when she was 33 and she got sober from alcohol when she was 28, which is really what opened up her world and opened up her own sense of connection to deeper sense of God, deeper sense of life, all of these more magical, mystical things. And it was
mm.
her shaman that she met in Florida that told her, like, you have to go to this school. Like,
Wow.
this is where you need to go. Like, this is what you need to do. And the whole story of like her meeting my dad and all of these things, like, really unfolded so beautifully. But not to say that childhood did not have its ups and downs, because it did.
Mm,
You have my mom who's sober, in recovery, really on her journey. And then my dad, who was in his journey in the dark way that never got to be relieved of that darkness with his own addiction. So
mm,
I would watch my mom meditate when I was young. She always meditated, and I didn't start until I was 7. At 6, I would start to like play with it. Like I would sit there with her, and I would be like, "Is something supposed to be happening? Like, where are you? Like, what's going on?" And she was just away. But with my parents splitting when I was 4, officially divorced at 5, it was like light and dark. Mom's house, it's like we
mhm,
have structure, we have rules, we eat dinner, like we are, quote, normal. And then at dad's house, it was like, you feed yourself, you figure it out, like it's very different environments. And I
mhm,
would say that without those practices of meditation and connection, like I would not be nearly as in as much peace or in as much regulation as I am now as an adult if I didn't
mm,
have these tools as a child. And it
mhm.
was something that just came very natural to me. Like my mom taught me, we set up altars when I was probably about 7. She gave me permission to
Wow.
light candles, like, pick out what you want to put on your altar. Like, what do you feel connected to? And my mom's mom, who was, very Catholic, very, just in a very different mindset, she was so, like freaked out in the sense of like, why is your mom letting you light candles? You're going to start a fire. And I'm like, me? I'm responsible. I'm not going to start a fire. We weren't clueless or like aloof to what we were doing. We knew we had to treat things with sacredness and to treat things with care.
Mm,
And I mean, always growing up, it's almost like the spiritual brain was already there. I went to preschool in an ashram, so that was already a different environment. I didn't go to like a traditional preschool, and it was very much more community oriented. So it's much
mhm.
more about service, and we would play around in the grass, like really more nature based kind of play. Like going to
Cool.
kindergarten, going to magnet school with a uniform, I was like, where are we?
Oh.
What are we doing? But the journey started before I was even here. And then
Mm,
it really continued to just grow and expand as I was going through hard times. My dad
mhm,
left when I was 8. He left. We never lived with him again. That was very challenging, very hard, going through mom being a single mom, going to school again, figuring
mm,
out everything she has to do, but like still doing it with her sobriety, her sanity, her connection to God, to spirit, and to be able to figure it all out was really that
wow.
testament of like faith that things are always going to work out. And they always
Mhm,
do. And that foundation really comes from there. So it was a very different journey than most growing up, but it
yeah.
was very special, and it's put me on this path of knowing that I was going to be a healer. I just didn't know what it would take form as. Would I be a therapist? Would I be an acupuncturist? Would I be, you know, who knows, a minister? Like what path would have opened up? And now I kind of get to do a lot of little bits of that in one, a little bit. So very magical.
That sounds so amazing. I think this is so cool to hear how it so beautifully can help kids when we teach young kids because they get down in those lower brain more easily anyways, right? And
Mm-hmm.
when we just would teach kids more how they can regulate themselves, how much easier they would feel as an adult and just like more in touch with themselves or not feeling like the whole universe is against them. Definitely. So that's already so cool to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, how did you start, like when you are young and you probably want to go outside play? Were you naturally drawn? Like, okay, you saw your mom meditating, and then did you decide you want to do it, or just like out of curiosity, or did your mom make you do it? And how was it for you to meditate in the like when you were 6, 7 years old? Like, was it short? Was it long?
I
Yeah.
definitely was not forced. I definitely wanted to do it. And we always did it either early in the morning or at night. So like playtime was over and I felt good when I did it. I would say I did about 10 minutes every morning and night from maybe first or second grade. So like 7-ish until middle school. So like 10, 11. 'Cause then of course middle school started and that's like, oh, I'm so busy and I'm so tired and so whatever. It was very true for that version of me at the time. But that's when I got a little more flowy, not as like every single day. And I loved doing it. And I would have friends over and I'd like get my friends to do it with me. And then sometimes they'd be like, "Do we have to meditate?" And I'd be like, I guess not. Like, sad, you know? But I definitely
Mm,
wasn't forced. I liked it. I felt really good doing it. And for the most part, it was just like self guided. Like it was just me sitting in quiet or sitting with music. I did listen to guided imagery growing up. Belle Ruth and Napastack was my lady growing up. She did like all kinds of different guided imagery and stuff like that. So I was very good at getting myself into that just like more quiet state. And it was normally, dark in my bedroom. I had my candles. So, from a light standpoint, the energy was already not lower, but more still, more calm. And it was just
mhm,
easy to do. And I think because my mom did it, it wasn't like, oh, I want to be like her, but I was definitely curious, like, why does she
mhm,
continue to do this? And knowing
mhm,
that for the most part, she was pretty level headed. I mean, she was a single mom figuring it out. She could have been
mhm,
off her rocker and she wasn't, at least not
mhm.
from my memory. So it's really like the testament that the work works when you work it and
Yeah.
that it can produce those results. And I just liked how I felt and it made me feel grounded, made me feel connected. I don't honestly remember meditating when I was at my dad's house in those first few years of
Mm,
starting because I didn't have anywhere to do it. Of course, like, could I have sat in my bed? Could I have gone somewhere? Yeah, but like the frequency there was dark and was not necessarily the safest place to like sit down and go within.
mhm.
But that's when I would start to see the angels around him. Like I would see the archangels around him and I would go home to my mom and I'm like, this giant blue man, Archangel Michael, is like standing over daddy. And she was like, good, like keep seeing him, honey. Like, but it was interesting that I only saw the angels when I was in the dark places. I didn't see them at my mom's. I didn't see them anywhere else, just there. So
Wow.
it was almost like the reminder that I was always being protected, even though I was in a place that might have felt vulnerable or not safe. And
Mhm.
yeah.
That's a beautiful message, though.
Hmm.
That's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you continue to see those angels or other forms of beings? Like some people, they report seeing some not so nice beings in meditation, and they just get super super scared and scared of.
Mhm.
I'm curious, like what you saw in meditations or like angels or beings around you, because kids, they are quite receptive for that kind of form, and then they just forget or they just push it down because like, what are you talking about? There is no friend of yours, like.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting because, right, children, I truly believe, right, when they come out of the womb, like they're the
Mhm,
closest to God. Like children are the
mhm,
closest thing to that world, that metaphysical place, because they just came from there. So they're still very connected. Kids live in a hypnotic subconscious state until they're like 7 or 8 years old. So I don't think I saw with my like bare open eyes. I have not necessarily seen the angel since I was probably 10. But
Mhm.
over the years, and I've never seen anything dark. Like that's never been
Mhm.
a part of my journey. Like I've never seen anything dark. I completely believe the people that have seen, really dark, scary stuff. I
Mhm.
absolutely believe it, but it's also like, all right, is that a reflection of something within? Is it something you inherited? Like we don't have to give our fear over to it, even though that's very natural. If we
Mhm.
truly know that true, divine light lives within us and around us, whatever that it's there for something. But I never
Yeah.
saw the dark stuff. It was more, but I'm very clairsentient now, and I have been always. So it's like I feel it. I'm like, there's something not right over there, or there's
Mhm.
something really off. I had a friend who had a baby when she was 15,
Mhm.
and a few years later, she married the dad. It all worked out, but they had moved into this house. And I was
Mhm.
19. She was showing me the room where her daughter slept in. And there was this like dark, cold, just like icky presence. And I was at that point in my journey where I was like, why would I create that? Like, why would I make that up? All these things.
Mhm.
So I just, ignored it. And then a few hours later, her daughter comes home from the babysitter and she comes to her mom, and her mom goes, will you tell Miss Ananda where the dark lady comes? Like when she comes to your room, she starts crying, she's freaking out. And I was like, oh, it's that. So I picked her up. She was maybe like 3 or 4. And I said, can you show me where she comes? And she pointed to the exact spot where that
Wow.
cold was. And I was like, okay, so maybe I don't have to ignore it. I'm not creating it. I'm more so being a witness to that
Mhm.
darkness. And there's some reason that I can see it or sense it or feel it. And it doesn't have anything necessarily to do with me, but now it's more like, now that I have that awareness of it, how can I be a space for it to leave, to exit, to go away, to, reharmonize
Mhm.
that space? So there's been those moments when I've been like, some is not right about that. Like my discernment is very good in that sense of like, all right,
Mm.
feel that something's not right. I may not see it. Like I didn't see that there was like a dark lady, but I felt
There
that
was
frequency.
something off.
Yeah. So I'll feel those things. And if I do, calling it in, clearing it out. And it's not common or necessarily often that I have those experiences, but when you do, it's never been,
Mhm.
it's never really been manifested in real time. Like people that have really negative Kundalini experiences that have really dark things happen. And I say
Mhm.
that normally when there's negative Kundalini experiences, it's because they have gone too fast. This work is really sacred, and a lot of the teachers in this day and age have really, what's the right word? Just they all do it way too fast. Like it's people are not ready for it, especially if it's brand new to them. Like it takes a lot of time to integrate that
Mhm.
frequency in the body. So it can happen, but it's out of our own doing. But again, we don't know what we don't know. So being able to
Mhm.
start from a more grounded place and being able to integrate those things over time. So, and I do feel when there are positive frequencies, I'm like, all right, something feels really, feeling really good in here. Like I can feel that there is protection, or that there is safety or peace or whatever it is. And if we just call it the presence of God and all of the things that come from that, then
Mhm.
that's just it, if that all makes sense.
Yeah. No, it sounds very, very no, it does make very much sense. I love that you had this experience as well where you had to learn how to discern, because when we first start into this, and nowadays it's like everywhere, manifest this, manifest that, just be positive, and you just attract only positive, and then you start to, okay, there's something icky feeling here. Oh my gosh, is that me? Did I created it? Like I'm responsible for everything that happens in my life, and you start to go nuggets sometimes, and it can make you very, very anxious if something goes wrong, and then you react to that, and then it creates more of a loop, and it's just like it's a very tiring tiring cycle, where people can find themselves in. And I've personally been there too, and then at some point I had to be like, no, it's not. Oh, it's probably not my fault, but I'm still there to establish this discernment. And I love that you said that this work is very sacred, and I've been hearing this also from my first interviewee, Anouk Bindels, who had um, some experiences in meditating, and also going to India. So she had been in the very ancient spiritual stuff, also in touch early on in her life. And she also noticed that when people just jump into without any understanding, it can be too much, and then all this energy can create a little bit too much of chaos, depending on
Mm.
how much you are able to handle. And then just bringing yourself back and just grounding, because otherwise it can lead to just detachment, or just like you don't feel very connected, you feel spacey, but you don't really feel grounded in your body, and you're just like not properly functioning in your body in this realm. So I wonder how you usually help your clients to bridge that, because I think it's an issue these days. But
Mm-hmm.
also, I'm curious how on your journey, how you learned how to trust your emotions, because even those emotions of anger or sadness or whatnot, they are valuable for valuable information. They are not necessarily like we don't have anything that we don't need. It's a matter of how we move through it and how we can collect the wisdom out of it. And sometimes, especially when we are told you attract negative stuff when you're in a state of negativity or whatnot, it's hard to trust yourself and your body. It can be, when you don't know better, it can be scary. So I would love for you to take us
Yeah.
on your hand and just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's almost like gaslighting yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
like not allowing yourself to have we have this diverse human experience of, those positive, blissful, ecstatic moments. And we also have those deep, dark moments of grief, despair, anger, defeat, whatever that it might be. And all of those are a part of the journey, which I feel like, again, this realm of spirituality can, again, look at it as negative versus just witnessing and experiencing it for what it is and
Mm-hmm.
collecting the wisdom from it.
Yeah.
There is wisdom in the dark, and not in like the demonic scary, but like in
Yeah.
the dark, in the hard, in the troubled, in the uncertainty. There is a wisdom there. And so if there is someone or, anyone who is taking on a lot too fast, it's really more about slowing them down. So it's like, okay, if you're on this accelerated path and your body can't handle it, you're having symptoms, you're having reactions, you can't sleep, you can't this, it's like, what can we integrate now? Like, what is
Mm-hmm.
available now? Because a lot of times when people go on this journey, they start looking at their inner child stuff. They start looking at all these patterns. They start seeing all these things, and then they're trying to fix it all at once.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not even about fixing it, but it's more so, okay, there's a pattern here that's showing us something about how we operate, how we think, how we believe. And it's just not all to be done at one time. It could all be done at one time. There are those miraculous moments and things where that could happen. But I'd say for the most part, it's about the journey. So people are trying to hijack the journey and just get to the end.
Yeah.
So how can we unhijack the journey, right? So it's like, all right, where are we at right now? And we don't need anything else. You might
Yeah.
just need silent meditation just for 10 minutes twice a day for the next month. Like really looking at what's in your face right now, and how do we just start with that? And it's like, you don't need to read. People don't realize when we read books and we listen to things, it's opening up different circuits, different pockets of consciousness in our brain and our being. And sometimes it's too much. That it's like, all
Yeah.
right, you don't need to listen or take on any other information right now. Your body's still trying to shuffle where to put
Process.
everything it's already learning. So like
Yeah.
stop. Like there's nothing else you need to do. And a lot of times, because it moves so fast, people miss the big lessons. It's like, oh, I've learned this and I've learned this, but there was this bigger picture right in their face that they couldn't see. Is that part of their journey? It must be so, because it's happening. Like everything is a part of the journey, but also to be able to look at it from an even broader, bigger perspective of what is the point of all of it. The point of all of it is that we are, again, connected, whole, in that oneness with God, with life, with our experience, and knowing that we didn't come to be spirit. Like if we did, we would just go hang back out wherever we come from or wherever we go. But it's to really live in this human experience as awake, aware, and conscious as we can, without also hijacking it and, making
Yeah.
it about the spiritual ego of how much do
Oh.
I know? How much do I have to offer all the things, all the spiritual ego that comes with when someone goes on this journey and then thinks they know better than somebody. If you think you know something, it's like that's how much you don't know. Because people that know that they don't know that they don't know are open for that, experience and that different form of wisdom. But it's like, oh, I know what there is to know. Like God is laughing in your face.
Oh yeah. It's like every time you think like, oh, finally I figured everything out, and then there's something new coming in, and you're like, maybe not. And
Mm-hmm.
there's like a tiny little bit of truth in everything. So zooming out and having then the bigger picture, I love that you were saying that. And
Yeah.
it makes you much more grounded, because if you encountered in something else that is like contradicting of what you thought is the truth, it can be very like, ugh,
Mm-hmm.
shedding, crushing the ego hard.
Mhm. Well, it's like people don't realize that trauma lives in the body, but from a conscious standpoint, we leave. If an event happens or things happen, the energy leaves because it can't handle being in the body because it's so uncomfortable or
Mm,
so, you know, like whether vulnerable, scary, whatever the word is that applies. But it's like the distinction of energy is that there's all this disharmonized energy in the body that then we're trying to like quote like meditate our way through or whatever that it is, but then it's just creating more distance
yeah.
and more
Oh yeah.
space, versus like, all right, with what I can do right now, like sometimes we can't handle all the grief or all the sadness or the anger in one moment, but like where can I start to bring it together? And
Mhm.
that's where again those human practices are really important, like eating enough food. Again, a lot of people out here trying to be breatharians, which I completely believe is a thing, but for the right people that are integrated enough to handle that frequency in the body. These are people
Mm.
that are like, oh yeah, I ate Subway yesterday. Like now I'm trying to be a breatharian. I'm like,
Mm.
oh no, oh no, 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 no. So to know that these human practices of just even learning how to take care of ourselves, like, are we sleeping enough? Are we
Oh,
eating enough? Are we actually hydrated, right? Because the body and mind are so perfectly reflected that if there's dissonance in the body, there's going to be dissonance in the mind. So how can we, bridge that gap, bring that back together? And I think that's a lot of what is missing is, it is a holistic practice. It is mind, body, heart, spirit as one. You can't neglect one and then expect everything else to go. And it's all a part of you. We know that the body is not us forever. We know that we are temporarily in this experience, but we still get to take care of the vessel that we've been born into and that it holds so much wisdom.
I need to charge my computer. Give me one second. There we go. One thing that I forgot to do.
I remembered.
Wow, but that sounds, yeah, I completely feel you in this point. Completely, usually with these, especially with these things that you cannot force them to be there, they kind of come natural as a side effect from you just like being whole and integrated. I noticed that when I was coming through something major, after like an intense practice of meditation, I was attending a retreat, and like a week long by Dr. Joe. Well, first of all, I came there with a completely wrong intention. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna smash my ego, gonna be super like free and stuff like this, like bye bye ego. Still need one to function though.
Yeah. Everyone's first thought is like, I want to crush the ego. And I'm like, hate to break it to you, sweetie.
Yeah. And I was just having such a hard time. I had a beautiful time,
Mm-hmm.
and but there, I was so shocked and sometimes what came up for me, like how I was so scared. I didn't know where all this fear was coming from. I was scared to do simple walking meditation. I was freaking out, and then so many emotions like guilt or shame, and just say, usually I didn't even know why I was crying. I was like, yeah, I'm crying, but I don't know why, and I can't stop. So it can be very overwhelming, and because of past patterns, I was beating myself up for it. I was like, man, I decided to join this retreat. am supposed to, I wanted to get better, but I feel like I'm getting worse. And I didn't know how to be gentle with me in that moment. Like I said, I had a lot of beautiful synchronicities and beautiful moments too, definitely. But I just remember how it was like Pandora's box was open, and I just unfiltered looked inside, and I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I can handle it all at once. And I refused to meditate after that. I needed some time to just like kind of breathe, because my body was so contradicting to go into that space again. So I really needed some time to ground and just to be. And then I figured it out after a while how just to sit there and not to try to fix something, simply sitting with myself, surrendering, feeling everything, the pain, discomfort, and everything. And then it got better again. And then I noticed, oh my gosh, oh, I feel whole, I feel better. But the moment I try to get me to that place where everything goes away, or the moment I try to fix something, it usually gets worse or more intense. So whenever I just like, and it's still a practice, because for me, when something comes up, it's quite physical in a sense of like pain or sensations like this. And then I'm just like, okay, got it. I'm hands off. I don't know. I just leave it up to whatever there is out there. I can fix it. I just let it go. But yeah, that's such a wonderful reminder that you mentioned that it's actually not in our hands how fast it goes. It's just like the level of how much we can allow ourselves and how gentle we can be with ourselves. It really opens the doors and yeah, determines the pace or how far we go or how fast we go.
Mhm.
Definitely.
And like the power
How?
of that surrender, you know, like
Yeah.
the power of the act of surrender is everything. Because if you can
Yeah.
actually surrender to where you are, not trying to force yourself to be further along or more behind or wherever that you think you're supposed to be, like that's where the magic is. That's where the gifts
Mhm.
are that we just try to have control over, which again, like God's laughing in your face.
Yeah. True though. True. And it's like also you're not honoring what is right now, because it's like beautiful where it is where you are right now once you really surrender. And actually, I would love to discover this word surrender more, the meaning behind the word surrender more with you, because people have whole different ideas. And I noticed that my personal definition of surrenders has changed over time too. So, what does it mean to you when you see your clients, or with all the experience that you have in your own personal life, or when you see people really transforming and just like letting go? What is the meaning behind let go and surrender for you?
I mean, it's like even just saying it and feeling into it, it's like your whole body just eases,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So I would say surrendering and letting go are very similar. They're almost like brother and sister, but letting go is almost like the action behind surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Surrender is like a total, it's almost like you, right? If we are one drop of the big ocean, the surrender is that you let yourself become the ocean. Like it
Mm-hmm.
is that full body, full being, just, I suppose it is allowing, it is letting go, but it's almost like from a mental and energetic standpoint, it's basically saying, I know I don't know what's best. I know that I don't know how, when, all the details of all of this working out, and I don't need to. So it is
Oh,
giving up, it's giving up control, it's giving up what you think is right or what you think is best, and it's just allowing that like divine intelligence, whether it's from within the body, from all the places that it comes from, to come and take us over. And that's where the healings are. You know, there's just been countless stories of the moment of the surrender is when the healing happens, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, whatever plane that it happens on for most people.
mm-hmm.
But I would say a lot of anxiety comes out of not knowing how to surrender or let go. You're
Yeah.
trying to hold on to what you think is good or true or what you need, whatever it is. And to live life in a surrendered state, like that adventure will take you far beyond anywhere you could have imagined.
Hmm.
You
That's,
know?
yeah, I feel that.
And there's no like guidebook for it. That's the hardest part.
Mhm.
Explaining to my clients who may not totally be there in an evolved consciousness, they want like, step by step, can I write this in my journal? How do I do it? And I'm like, it's not quite as easy as like 1, 2, 3, 4. It all happens in here and it's really hard to explain. But I do genuinely feel it. Like when I surrender, I feel it in my pelvis. I feel it in my feet. Like there is not only a letting go, but there's like a release. It's like I let go of any force. I let go of anywhere that I'm holding myself up. Like I drop, just let it go.
Wow.
And then in that moment, you become that full vessel of the miracle or that full vessel of the gift or the moment or whatever that it is. So
Do you have a practice, like daily practice that you use to keep you in that state, or is it already so in like second nature to you that you just know how to do it and at any time?
it's definitely somewhat second nature because there's some things it's really easy to surrender to, right? Like, for example, I almost always get like a front row parking spot. It just happens,
Nice.
right? Because it's like I live in a surrendered state of like, of course, God divine will provide for me exactly what I need. So I'm living out of that surrendered place of if I know it's going to be there, why would I worry about it? And then it's always there. So there's those little things, right? Like, if something seemingly doesn't work out, a client cancels, something happens, like things are always moving in a way that I don't need
Mhm.
to worry about it. There's definitely bigger things that may feel harder to surrender or let go of, like things that really, anchor down in your system that might bring up anxiety or fear or worry or doubt. And in those moments, it's kind of like that inner prayer for me that's just like, all right, if I've assessed it from a logical place, right? I'm like, all right, I have assessed all the options. And like, why would I give my praise to the worry? Like, that's again, like giving it more energy. It's one thing to acknowledge it. I'm not going to be like, you're not real, but I'm like, I'm acknowledging my fear or my worry, my doubt, whatever. But I'm also not going to give it power to grow. So then it's like, all right, if everything works out in highest divine order every day, every minute, all the time, can I let go deeper? And sometimes it takes doing it every 5 or 10 minutes. Like you do a little bit
Mhm.
once and you're like, all right, that feels a little better. And then like the fear hits again. And you're like, all right, again, like how can I trust a little deeper? And to me, that's like a testament of like how deep is your faith really in whatever that
Mhm.
you believe in. So it's opening up that place even more. It's really more like an initiation. And it's like the bigger the trust, the bigger the miracle.
Yeah.
So really being able to work through those fears. But there's definitely things that I get tripped up on that are harder to let go than others. And it's just like my own personal curriculum and practice of life that is going to get me to where I need to be. But it's normally more internal, like, all right, if I let this go, I know it's going to work out better than I could expect. But I always ask, right? Like, may the highest, most powerful result happen for whatever that it is. Like, may it work out even better than I could have ever expected. And I'd say it almost always does. I can't even really think of a time that it didn't.
Wow. I love that you are putting it out there too, like having a prayer or having just like setting an intention instead of like, I want this to happen exactly this way, please, and don't forget this, and please, and this time and that location.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed that it helps me too, actually, to um, actually confess what is bothering me and what is like making me worry or how I am, just looking at my state of being or my personality or where I am right now, and then just surrender that part because I don't know how to fix that, and in with the same level of consciousness, I definitely can't, and it takes a long time to fix it, like with your personality, fixing personality, your patterns, trying to fix your patterns and whatnot. So it really is like energetically, and I notice then the more I can surrender in my meditations, the better my day gets. And it's like always naturally coming to me. It's not like I had to get it analytically. And it shows me that by nature we are very flexible, we are creative if we are not covered up by fear or worries or not useful belief systems. And it's always very magical to witness. I still need to like meditate because it just helps me to ground. Sometimes in my daily life I'm just like, I'm too overwhelmed right now, I cannot calm down, I cannot sit down right now, I need to move or I need to do something. But when I get in this place or space at meditation, and sometimes there were times where it took me a lot and maybe it didn't even go away completely, maybe it was just like one step a little bit ahead and then 2-3 steps back again, and it's just not linear at all. But the more I reflect, as you did just now, the more I understand, I'm pretty safe. Like so far it always has worked out, and it has always worked out in the moment where I was like, whatever, I'm happy where I'm right now, and then boom, something positive happens. So I love that you are saying that, and I'm curious if you have, again, for me, I'm still, because this type of knowledge, it wasn't with me at the very beginning of my life. It came pretty much 2019 or something like that, just like a couple of years ago. So I need this meditative practice to just like ground myself. And I wonder, like, do you have any type of practice, or when you have clients, how do you help them strengthening their faith in something better? Is it by really completely just like releasing all the emotions, or how does this process look like? Do you teach them how to think more positively or create new habits or behavioral patterns? How does this process look like for a person that has not the experience of meditation for a long time?
Usually it comes by like a series of questions, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you have someone who's suffering and someone who's been through some, pretty
Mm-hmm.
hard things and they're still suffering. Let's say it's been 20 years, they're still suffering. It normally is always a conversation. It's always a lot
Mm-hmm.
of questions, right? Like, for example, and of course, knowing whatever that their definition of God or spirit or life is at this time of whatever that we're talking. And it's the question of, do you think that you were created and put here to suffer? And they always say, no. They're always like, no, I don't think I was. And I'm like, all right. And do you think that your suffering is meant to, define you in a negative way for the rest of your life? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. And it's really that conversation that just, again, it opens and unlocks something. Like, we can't explain it. There's just parts of the consciousness that start to open up when it's like, all right, if we know that every single little thing works out to a T, timing is not random. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it random that you ended up in my chair? Like, no. So it's really getting them to see how perfect and on purpose every single little thing in their life is, whether it's positive or negative. Because it's like, to be able to acknowledge that everything is happening in such divine timing and such divine order, then they can realize that their healing is a part of that divine timing and their divine order, that their freedom is a part of that their, what's the word? It's almost like uncaging themselves
Mm-hmm.
is a part of that. So it's really not even really teaching them. It's more like
Mm-hmm.
being curious and getting those subconscious thoughts open about it of, right, like, how does life really work? And
Mm-hmm.
they've never, for the most part, ever really asked themselves these questions in a deeper way to really be curious and understand, like, yeah, why did this happen? This thing, this event or events that caused me so much pain, so much suffering. Like, what is the growth from it? What is the lesson from it? What is the purpose of it? So really getting them connected to their own sense of personal purpose with their story, with what they've learned, what they've been through, and also that they were not created by mistake. and that they
Mm,
weren't created to live in this place of suffering. Of course, we've come to experience it as temporary, but not to live in it full time. Not
yeah.
to give so much energy to it. It almost always happens with a conversation of just opening up more and more awareness of like, why are we really here? It's very esoteric, it's very existential, but almost always there's that light bulb moment of like, aha, like my birth, me being here was so miraculous. Like out of all of the souls, out of all of the moments that we could have come to earth, like, why did we choose this one? Why was I called forth for this one?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like what is my pain propelling me into, like how
Mm-hmm.
is it a service in my journey, because things just don't happen on accident, they just don't, like nothing is on accident, nothing. So it's really
Yeah.
more like from a philosophical standpoint, opening up those bigger essences of consciousness in the brain of everything is interconnected, everything.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful also to, with questions, just make people, when people realize, oh, I'm not that random. I'm actually like a part of the whole, and there's a reason why I'm here. Because probably, maybe even as teenagers, probably mostly around that time, when you kind of lose your innocence of being a kid and being thrown into the world or in school systems, and then you just remember my German teacher, he used to say, those in fifth, sixth grade, seventh grade, they have so much energy. They're running around and they just like are loud and creative and they want to participate. And then when you ninth, tenth, the 11th grade, they just like sit there and just like, when is this over? Like not participating at all, just waiting to be over because there's no room or expression for the individual most of the times. And then just to how enriching it would be for kids have this conversation early on so they understand, hey, you're not random, you're here for a reason and you're valuable and you're just completely individual. That would be absolutely amazing. But I have high hopes that it's I see it more coming up, especially
Yeah.
these days in like our generation. And I'm so happy that we have people like you helping guiding us through this type of stuff. So that sounds beautiful. Having someone, and also that you allow your clients to answer these questions by themselves, just like, oh, that they have this moment of realization or experience that, oh wow, I never thought of it that way. Yeah, I think that's completely true. I'm not here to suffer full time. I didn't sign up for that.
Mhm.
Wow.
And it's to give suffering its space, right? Because it has a
Yeah.
lesson, it has wisdom, but it's, you're not in 12th grade for 15 years.
Yeah.
It's like it has its moment, it has its lesson, but the more we can be open to what it's trying to teach us, the faster we get through it and the
Mm,
faster that it can integrate into the body. And sometimes these bigger, deeper traumas just take more time to process. But I'd say
mm,
that most of the time we're just numb and disconnected. And then that's what the holdup is. It's been 10, 15 years of this suffering, but yeah, because probably 7 years ago, you should have started looking at it a little more deeply,
mm,
giving it a little bit more attention, you know, really working through it versus like, oh, I know it's there. And some people just aren't ready. Again, whether it's out of vulnerability, fear, overwhelm, whatever that their bodily experience is. But if they have someone to do it with safely, that's where the
mm,
game changes.
mm. Yeah, that's completely true.
Yeah.
Mm. So would you say that also the like working through is it probably just feeling it and giving it permission to feel it fully? Or how can we understand that part?
Well, it's one, it's acknowledging it, but it's also even getting to know it, right? Like people can know that an event happened, but not actually have felt it.
Mm,
So it's totally different of like, oh, I know that I saw my cat get run over by a car, right? Like I know that, but like I haven't actually felt that moment, right? So it's like
Mhm.
people can really talk through their experiences, but not actually feel through their experiences.
Mhm.
So it's really getting to the understanding from a frequency standpoint. What frequency is still living in my body? It's just lying dormant. It's just not active, but it's there. It can get triggered. So whether that be anger, grief, sadness, anguish, whatever that it might be, it's all there. But to be able to have the space to discover it, explore it, acknowledge it, and actually figure out what does it really mean? What did it mean about me? Right? Because you'd be like, oh yeah, my parent abandoned me, and you can talk right through it, but it really means that, oh, I was unworthy, or not lovable or unwanted, all of these stories that are operating underneath that you might not know are there. So it's
Mhm.
getting to the understanding of what are those stories that we're living out of, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And then
Yeah.
can we work through, oh yeah, being unlovable has showed up here, here, here. Being unworthy and unwanted has showed up in all of these places. Mind blow. Okay, yeah. How do I, right? If I saw myself through the eyes of God, through the eyes of love, how would I see and treat myself? Like, I'm
Mhm.
always lovable. I'm always wanted. Like, if I was not supposed to be on earth anymore, I wouldn't be here. Life would have taken me out. So it's like, I'm very wanted. I'm very needed. I'm very all of these things. But it is a mindset change. It's a consciousness shift for sure.
Mhm.
So really getting to know, to acknowledge the feelings. What do they actually mean? What did they make it mean about me? And like, can I bring forgiveness to those places?
Oof.
Because that
Yeah.
takes time, and that takes a certain level of understanding and awareness and wisdom as well.
Definitely. Forgiveness. I noticed like it's easier to forgive once you overcame the emotions that were stuck. It's like a side product, but like trying to forgive someone is like, "Mm, I think I can't
Mhm.
yet." Yeah. Wow. That's really profound what you just said. And what I noticed about, or what I see is how chaotic or our relationship to some specific emotions are, especially like anger or sadness. For me personally, it's really anger. It's probably for a lot of women, probably especially. Maybe it shows up differently in men. Um, but I wonder how your relationship with your emotions, when they show up, how you provide space for them, or how you navigate through them when they show up intensely. And you just, because when you have a higher awareness, you also, I
Mhm.
feel like I feel them more intensely in my body too.
Mhm.
So then I'm like, get like, ooh, oh, what's happening right now?
Well, yeah,
It
because
makes me uncomfortable. So that was quite interesting for me to witness, and to also see other people witnessing that same experience when they started meditating, that they suddenly got so aware of what they were thinking and feeling that it was like, okay, I need a breather right now. How do I process that?
yeah, it's like whenever you go through that, like you're not asleep anymore. So you're like, oh yeah, I do have feelings, right? And like we feel them. Like it's not just up here, like it's physiological, like
Mm.
emotions, energy and motion. Like they move. They have an expression, they have a frequency that moves through the body. So it's like I will say, especially for me being so what's the word? I don't want to say busy, but I'm definitely very active. I have a lot of places to be, a lot of people to see, a lot of things to do. So that slow time is more rare unless it's like really planned and very diligently,
Mhm.
accounted for. So sometimes I'll definitely have feelings I don't realize I'm having until later. And I'm like, yeah, I felt kind of off, but like I couldn't describe it. I couldn't get to the
Mhm.
real full essence of it yet. And sometimes I'll just sit back if I have the time, right? I'll sit back and assess. It's like, okay, does this feel like annoyance? I'm like, no, not that. And I kind of just like assess. I try things on. Like, what it feels like to feel sad. Does it feel sad? And you're like, not quite. Maybe it feels, like anguish, like it's this deep
Mhm.
profound soul pain. Normally,
Mhm.
when you're feeling anguish because it hits deep, it runs deep. But it might be, am I feeling a sense of doom, like this intense fear or worry? I've
Mhm.
learned a lot about the emotions through the organ systems over time. So I'm very familiar with different emotions versus a lot of my
Mhm.
clients are like, I wouldn't have even known how to put that into words, like frightfully
Mhm.
overjoyed. You're really excited about something, but you're really scared about it at the same time.
Mhm.
So it's like I've gotten to know different words to express different emotions, over these last many years of study. So I am a lot better at describing what it is or what it feels like, but sometimes it takes time for it to land or for
Mhm.
us to get it because it's there, but do we have the awareness to be able to receive what it's trying to tell us? And sometimes that
Mhm.
takes a little time. And then we want to try and do it right away and then it doesn't happen and then you're frustrated, so now I'm feeling frustration, but that's not the root emotion. What's underneath the frustration? So
Mhm.
it's being in that awareness and not necessarily in analyzation but in witness, like we are just being witness to the experience happening inside my consciousness in my being right now. And sometimes that's hard in itself. And emotions like to come at really hard times, like really inappropriate times. It's like, I don't have the time or the energy or the space to feel this right now, but I'll acknowledge it. I'll be like, all right, I know it's there. I'm going to acknowledge it, but I'm going to remind it. I'm going to come back to it later. And I'll make sure that that night or that next morning, like I'll give myself a little time to, look at it, process it, be with it, whatever that it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Taking time out of one's days. Really, sometimes I just need to, okay, I don't know what's going on. I just need to sit there and feel it, even if I don't like it, but I know it's gonna bother me otherwise for the next couple of days. So
Mm-hmm.
I just gotta sit with it. Yeah, I love that you were saying that being familiar with different types of emotion really helps to speak it out loud. And when you speak it out loud, it's like nearly, oh, like a release in itself. Oh, that is anger, or that is sadness, or that is like annoyance, or whatever. I've been doing a coaching a couple of last year or 2 years ago, and she gave us a wheel of different types of emotions, and I was like, oh, damn, I didn't even know that all these types of emotion even exist and that this is an emotion even. I wasn't aware or that this emotion is part of this category. I always thought it was part more of that category. It's like a beautiful wheel, and then it kind of breaks it like those basic emotions, and then we have like more variants of that. And that was so interesting, and I really was like, oh wow, we are so diverse. I didn't even know I was able to feel all of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really, really great thing to get familiar and to help to release all of that.
Yeah.
I'm curious what the emotion or like a belief system that was for you personally, a very challenging one.
I'm
Uh,
a girl of straight sadness, like grief, sadness, anguish. Those are my emotions. My sister is the anger, the rage, all of that. Like, I
mhm.
don't get angry too often, but like, sad girl is the part of me that I've had to really work with. And it shows up because the long meridian in Chinese medicine is, grief, sadness, yearning, crying, anguish, all those emotions. And I would say from a body standpoint, like asthma is the only thing I've struggled with throughout my
Wow.
lifetime. Which I didn't get until I was 8 years old, which was the same time of year that my dad had left. So it's like the
Mhm.
emotions of it all correlate really intensely. There's some other physical stuff like mold and things that all contribute to it. But I'd say from a frequency standpoint, emotions are so strong that if we can take care of the emotions, the physical can most
Yeah.
of the time take care of itself. Sometimes it can't. But I'm definitely a more sad, grief girl. Just growing up, we had a lot of death, a lot
Oh,
of yes, change, but a lot of death, whether that came in like, death, like, yeah, they're not here anymore, and just a lot of change. Like with my mom being in recovery, we would house women that were also in recovery growing up. And like, if they would relapse and leave, you'd never see them again. But you've just lived with
Mm,
them for 9 months and like really grown a bond and all these things. So it's like to know the biggest lesson I learned young was like, not that everyone's temporary, but like people come and go. They just do. Whether it's through death, whether it's just that life takes them somewhere else, but it's like to really enjoy people while they're there. Now, not
mm,
everyone goes, but a lot of people do. And it's whether they're
mm,
there for a season, a chapter, whatever it is, a lifetime. Lifetime is more rare, but it was to be able to adapt to that level of change and just like hurt of losing people so young. I mean, the amount of funerals we went to at a certain age was more than most, you know?
mm.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, that sounds tough.
Mhm.
It sounds tough to witness that as but also very empowering for you now. Back then, probably very tough, but now something also that you can get strength from that experience.
Yeah. And
Wow.
hope a lot of other people go through as well, you know?
Yeah, I noticed that for me it was the same. I used to collapse. Basically, when something was coming up, I was like, "Ugh," just collapsing into tears, into sadness. And then at some point it changed and there was a lot of anger. I'm still working on it because that's like a very unfamiliar emotion for myself and something that I just cannot see from, like, I never thought I was an angry person. So it's weird to get familiar with that. But it's also very interesting and showing a very different side of myself that I'm not familiar yet. Also very empowering. But yeah, that's and has that insight, have you discovered that early on, or was that very clear for you that like sadness or like anguish is something that you are overcoming and overcoming again and again? And how had this knowledge that these are your core wounds or whatever you want to call them, how has that helped you to navigate critical moments where these emotions come up?
I would say I was pretty young because I remember after my dad had left and we knew that we weren't going to be living with him again, that he had like skipped town, handed over his rights to custody, like he was out, he was gone. I remember the first time I felt numb. I was
Mm.
laying in my bed and I can't even think of whatever year it was, the early 2000s. I remember for the first time I laid in bed and I put a CD in the CD player and I listened to the whole album like without moving. And I was just laying there like staring at the ceiling, like not quite disassociating, but I knew I was like numb. I was like, I know what's going on, but I can't feel anything. So I
Mhm.
knew like that was my first really deep experience of just like nothingness after like a quote traumatic or stressful sad event. So I knew then that it was a part of my curriculum. And let's say if I was in third grade when that had happened, I was really good at math. Like I was top in my class at math. The following year, I fell asleep in math every day. And my teacher was like so concerned. She's like, are you not sleeping at home? But my dad was an engineer. He was really good at math. So I think it was
Well,
like, I can't connect to that right now because I'm too sad. So like my body would literally put me to sleep in math,
wow.
you know? So it was like knowing that there was these little things that just like felt like they were out of my control that I just like couldn't do anything about. And I'd say the deaths really started when I was like 7 or 8. And then it was like after that, it was like once a year or every two, like it was like big deaths. It was like boom, 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 boom. So it's just like, wow, like, yeah, life goes by fast and people don't last or they don't stay or they get sick or whatever it is. And so I knew that that was a part of that grief was a big part of my experience. And it didn't show up for me as anger, it just showed up as like heavy sadness. And I also did a lot of EFT tapping growing up.
Mm.
I don't know if you've seen EFT tapping. So I would tap if I was sad, if I was angry, like I would, it was like where my dependence on music started, of like listening to sad songs, creating, emotional memory with sad songs and all those things. And my childhood best friend growing up, her dad died when we were 5. Like when her and I first met, her dad had just died. So we definitely were like in this wavelength of like, life is
Yeah.
weird. Like things are strange. Like nothing is as it seems.
Mm.
And I also had these little psychic moments, you could say. When I was 15, I saw my grandfather. It was like we saw him over, like a holiday break, whatever. We were pulling out of the driveway, we're heading home, and it wasn't even like I thought it, like it came to me. It was like, you're never gonna see him again.
Oh.
And I was just like, okay. Like I witnessed it. I wasn't like, why? I wasn't quite, I was just like, okay, weird. I don't know if that's true or not. He died 2 days later.
Wow.
And it was just like, oh, okay, got it. The following year, my dad's sister, she also died. And the last time I saw her, it was like, this will be the last time you ever see her. Like she was waving goodbye to us at the airport. And I was like, I don't know if that's true, but like, okay. And then true. Never saw her alive again after that.
Mm.
So it's like knowing that I had these little intuitive hits of like, things are going to happen, but also knowing that like, it's just a part of the cycle of life. And that
Yeah.
it's still sad. We still get to process and integrate and acknowledge all that it means for us to lose someone or lose something, but that it is a part of the life cycle. And some people go through it, really heavy, really deeply, really young, like I did. And some people, their first loss isn't until they're in their 20s and it's their grandparent.
Mm.
It's just different life paths and different things that we're exposed to for different purposes. And everyone's journey is different. So that's just a part of what mine has been. So, and
Yeah.
it's like something I'm very familiar with, which I'm grateful for, because then I know if I'm not necessarily moody, but I'm like a little sad, I'm a little griefy for a couple days, I'm like, all right, it'll pass. It just will. And I just be with it and I allow it, I let it. But there's a difference. It's like, I can tell if there's something I need to feel versus if it's like a pattern trying to repeat in me. I'm like, oh,
Ah.
no. Like, here we go. No, 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 no. Like,
Mhm.
we're going to figure this out versus like, no, this is something really visceral that we just need to allow and need to process. There is a
Mhm.
difference. So
How did you learn to discern that? Like, when do you know it's like a pattern repeating itself, and when do you really need to feel it?
I think I got clear on it because I would know if after I felt it, if it felt like it left or if it just felt like it returned into the loop and it just wasn't back yet. Like I can feel if something felt more of like a toxic emotional cycle versus something I actually really processed and then let go.
Mm.
Like, I don't know, there's a feeling of toxicity that I could sense from a frequency standpoint of like, okay, this is just something that's going to keep coming. My body wants to feel it. It's addicted to it. It likes the feeling, all these things versus no, this is just a feeling that's been stuck and we're going to allow it and let it go. And then it goes. I don't know. There's a frequency to it that, it's like, oh no, I know that feeling. And it's not trying to leave. It just wants me to feel it because it wants me to connect to it. It wants my attention. It wants my energy. It's
Once
taking
you
from
get,
me versus like I'm giving to it and then it's releasing itself, you know?
thank you for sharing. I think it's always super interesting to have people like you on this podcast and just like listening to their journeys and just like listening to what they do or allow themselves to do when they go through hard times, because there was definitely a time where I thought, okay, once you figured it out, everything's gonna be butterflies, cool. But just to hear that it's like mostly a matter how you navigate through the emotions, and that it's like you always get your experiences and it gets easier. You know what to do, you get more familiar with it, you can discern actually more. That's very wonderful to hear, and it's just like makes it all more relatable and like, oh,
Yeah.
I think I can do that too.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and people think that being on a spiritual journey means you'll never suffer again. And I say that's
Mm-hmm.
the farthest thing from the truth. Because if anything, it's expanding your capacity and your ability to experience all of life's offerings, whether it's pain or light, if it's light or dark. It's just that we have a better understanding of how to have a healthier relationship to our experiences
Yeah.
versus not having any experiences anymore. Like that
Yeah,
wouldn't
that's
be,
sad.
like that wouldn't be the real reason why we came. And it's really to inspire and help others along the journey also, but also to, have your own personal understanding of like, what does it mean to suffer? And can I
Yeah.
be not only okay with it, but can I embrace it for what it is? You
Yeah,
know, so it's hard.
definitely. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like I got a lot of nuggets and a lot of um put that on your remember list.
Make a sticky note out of that one.
So that was really, 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 really great to just revisit that, and maybe going towards the end, I wonder if you, like, we covered all the things about discernment and everything. Is there something like a practice where you keep yourself in check during the day, or are you just very connected to yourself and you just feel it if something is off? You mentioned like you, if you have the time and if it's appropriate, you give yourself the time to feel, or either you take some time later on the day. Um, but is there something or also that you recommend your clients to do during the day just to check in with themselves and to, because sometimes it can be quite sneaky where old patterns want to go back and you're like, oh, I'm feeling so good, I don't need to do the practice right now, like over it, and then next second you're like, oh, I think I slipped.
Yeah. Normally it's literally something as simple as like hands on your heart and just tuning in. And it's like, what's there? Like, what is on the surface right now? Or maybe what's even underneath that you can feel is there, but it's not on the forefront. And
Mm,
sometimes I'll tell people to do this 3 times a day, whether it's, morning, midday, night, or whenever they're feeling stressed, right? So it's like, all right, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling overwhelmed. What is that feeling? Is it the feeling that I can't get it done? Is it the feeling that it's never going to end? Is it the feeling of, like get clear on what that feeling is? And then it's like, but is that feeling true?
yeah.
Most of the time it's not true. It's just trying to project itself into our experience. So then
Mm-hmm.
it's all right. Thank you for allowing me to be grounded enough to have everything I need to get through this day, through this moment with as much ease and grace as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just opening the way of like, I'm acknowledging I'm having this moment of adversity, whatever that it might be for the specific person, but that we are literally divinely designed to have everything we need to handle it. And sometimes that might look like, having to renegotiate some things. Maybe it's you're not as completely present and connected as you would like to be, but that you're still going to get through it anyway. Like
Mm-hmm.
following through on your commitments to the best that you can, that you've already committed to. And some things it's like, no, I just don't have energy for that. And how can we, get that across to someone or something or whatever it is in the most, kind and honorable way possible,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And if it feels overwhelming, it's like, all right, divine, this is feeling really challenging for me. Can you take something off my plate? And then something's like, oh, that got taken care of. This shifted, this moved, and you're like, okay, I can breathe a little more. I can breathe a little better, And
Beautiful.
sometimes it's just even acknowledging the overwhelm and that it feels like there's nothing you can do about it. So it's like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm acknowledging this feeling of I can't change it, and I'm going to do my best to surrender into it anyway and just allow. So, like, thank you for allowing me to allow. I do my best to allow. I do my best to allow. But I feel like when you have your hands over your heart and even like skin to skin, like underneath there,
Yeah.
you just really feel into that essence and vastness of your heart consciousness, and it just opens things up differently. There is like some kind of regulating aspect to it. I'm sure there's science behind it, but there's some kind of regulating aspect to it that really brings you back to the body. So
Yeah.
that's normally it. Like 1, 2, 3 times a day of just like, all right, right in this moment, was I in the future worrying about something? Was I ruminating on the past, or was I actually here?
Yeah.
Where am I
You're
right
really present.
now? Mm-hmm.
Wow. I love this exercise. I'm just like feeling already like, oh, feels so good. There's indeed amazing science behind this. I read an article about that heart myth was providing uh about doing like the heart breath, for instance, and it's a huge article and it breaks down what happens on like a biological,
Mm,
biochemical, hormonal, um whatever level to your body when you are just tuning into your heart and just like slowing down. It would exceed the format right now to explain everything, and I need to read through it again and again because it's so complex sometimes. But it's just like amazing science that what
you'll have you'll have
powerhouse.
to send it to me because
Yeah, I
there's
will.
I know
I
there's
will.
something there. I'm like so not a science person because I'm like, what do you mean you experience it and you know it? But for the people that need that, knowledge in
Mhm.
their face to believe it, it's like, all right, we'll play along. Like we'll give you your evidence that you need. But if you feel it, you know that it works. But it is cool to see at every level how
Yeah,
intelligent and wise the body is. That when we work with it versus against it, it thrives so effortlessly.
yeah. I love that now science is catching up more and more upon it because it really can saturate your analytical mind. So there's really no more questions about it. And you're like, nice. I really can surrender to this knowledge. Sometimes it's still like, hesitant to fully buy or fully believe in it, but at least there's some evidence. So now it's only a matter of applying it and getting my own experience out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I definitely gonna send it to you. It's really really beautiful, beautiful to read. It's really exciting as well.
Yeah.
And I
Yes,
love that
please.
you are suggesting that to your clients to just have a little moment of like tuning into your heart. And with the more practice they have, it's also easier and it just like helps to feel that relief more instantly.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. Maybe a last question. Usually, um, I always say when the hero returns home successfully, he brings back the wisdom that he or she collected and shares with the world. And I wonder what you would like to share with us and with the viewers that you have experienced during your journey and that you would like to share where you think, wow, I think this could really help a lot of people. I think you have a lot.
There could be so much. I'm like, where to even begin? Let's see. I would say, I suppose, the top message is that whatever your belief is, right, like God, life, spirit, higher intelligence, higher wisdom, like without it, there is no life, right?
Hmm.
Like the breath connects us to life. The breath is of God, right? It's like we can live asleep, we can, but you're not really living. So it's like to be in consultant with, that higher divine power, that higher essence of your understanding of if I live from this place of connection, like all things work out, all things unfold, all things are taken care of. Like that's the real root of everything is that connection with our like spirit home basis, if that
Mm.
makes sense. Because it all comes back to that. It'll always come back to that, to a place of frequency, a place of connection. And sometimes it might be hard to find. You might go through years of struggle and confusion, but that'll always be there. It's just waiting for us to return back to it.
Wow. Look at me, I'm already seem enlightened by these words. Thank you. These are so wonderful words that they really hit home for me. Really, thank you. Thank you a lot for being here and just sharing everything with us. And I'm so happy that you took your time. It was really a pleasure to talk to you. Again, I love your energy. I love how grounded you are in this knowledge, and I love how you are expressing and just taking us along with you on your personal journey and just showing what you collected. And Yeah, there's something special about you, definitely. I love how you just connect these two realms, like being here in your body, and then just also how do I integrate everything into your body, and how can I live this life here, because we are here and we are human and we are part of spirit as well, but we are also human. So you made it very, very accessible right now, and also when I was having the coaching with you, and I'm so very, very grateful for that. So thank you so much.
Of course.
I really encourage everyone who is watching it. I mean, you're gonna be in super safe hands with Ananda. So if you are feeling called to book a session with her, you will find all the information in the description box. And I just know you're gonna be in very, very safe, beautiful hands. And yeah,
Thank you
thanks
for that.
so much. And I hope to have you again someday on this podcast. I'm pretty sure we're going to have plenty more of topics to cover.
Absolutely.
And I hope you have a wonderful day, everyone. Bless you all, and we see each other on the next episode to embark together on another epic journey. So, thank you for watching.